Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, it's the finale of our Best Nintendo Music of All Time tournament with Greg Smith. It's dangerous to go alone, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society goes with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. Mark, how's it going?
I am feeling so pumped for tonight. I am so excited to be here.
Yeah.
This music tournament is one of the most fun things I think we've ever done.
It's occupied so much space in my brain and on the wall of my apartment. And it has also occupied our friendship with Greg Smith. Greg, hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Hashtag Occupy Friendship. Right?
Yeah, occupy that friendship.
Right?
We got to take those banks down.
Yeah.
I think it is, like, not an overstatement to say we could not have done this without you, Greg.
I think that's correct, yes.
This was such a gosh darn dream and a gosh darn delight. And to do it with two good friends like you, it's just been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Guys, let's just say nice things about each other for the rest of the
love it.
episode.
Yeah, let's just leave it as an 8-way tie.
Yeah.
All right, instead of that, I'm going to play the transition music, and then we're going to talk about what we have left on the board, all right? Guys, let's do it.
Do we have to come to a unanimous
consensus
for
before
each?
I can move on? Oh,
Fine.
yeah. Well, let's play the transition music, and then we'll figure out what the parameters are.
Fair.
Do I have to agree
To
Do
that?
Yes.
You don't have to. Are you saying yes, that you're agreeing?
Or yes,
Just
that
play
you
the
have to
music.
agree.
Because I don't agree.
Is it too late to nominate 8-Bit Betty and our theme
Man,
music?
8-Bit Betty is so good.
8-Bit Betty's rad. I'm so glad that he agreed to do our music. But he's not in this tournament. No 8-Bit Betty.
Well, the music is not composed for a video game. It's composed for a podcast.
A wonderful point. Here are the pieces of music that we will be, smashing up next to each other, seeing who's best. We have 8 pieces of music from 8 different categories. From representing the Mario division, Steam Gardens from Super Mario Odyssey. Representing the 8-bit division, Silence of the Daylight from Castlevania 2. Representing the miscellaneous Nintendo division, Love is in the Air from Yoshi's Story. Representing the RPG division, Balance is Restored, the end credits from Final Fantasy VI. Representing the Zelda division, the Overworld theme from A Link to the Past. Representing the 16-bit division, it's Brinstar Overgrowth with Vegetation from Super Metroid. Representing the third-party division is the Lonely Rolling Star from Katamari Damacy. And representing the remix division, of course, is Full Steam Ahead from Spirit Tracks as it appears in Super Smash Bros. Gentlemen, now we must pit these pieces of music against each other.
It's true.
So, must we reach unanimous consensus on each of these matchups, or will we just bring it to a vote? Because when we got to a lot of these decisions, we did it by voting, right? There were a lot of split decisions.
Yeah, there's a lot of 2 versus 1s.
There was a lot of 2 versus 1s. So do we want to carry that forward into the tournament proper, or should we have higher standards for the final bracket and we must reach unanimous consensus?
I guess I feel like I don't know how, at least with the final pick, that it's not a unanimous decision.
Okay, the final pick must be unanimous.
Okay.
Okay. Also, at the end of this, we pledge to remain friends.
Yes.
Oh, I
No,
pledge.
no matter what. Okay, good. So the very first matchup here, we are going to be talking about Steam Gardens from Super Mario Odyssey versus Mark.
Silence of the Daylight from Castlevania 2.
All right, let's hear a little bit of Steam Gardens from Super Mario Odyssey. Now, I think this was a little bit of a controversial pick at the time, right? And Greg stood his ground, championing the original Mario 1-1 ground theme, which is great. We can all agree.
Yeah, sure. The Mario theme song is, quote, great.
What?
Sure.
Do you think I am being disingenuous when I say that?
No, I think it is, to me, an amusing understatement to what I would call one of the most iconic, influential pieces of music probably ever written.
So it is certainly iconic, and everything, like all this Nintendo music is like built on the bones of like, and all of like Mario gaming in general is built on the bones of Super Mario Brothers. I always like to like, I think that sort of entombing like the classics, like I like it, but I want to like push against it, just like for me personally.
What do you mean by entombing?
Like, I don't necessarily want to, because something is like old or foundational, I don't want that to be the reason that I love it. And I don't think that is necessarily what we were arguing about Mario 1-1, because it is it is a good piece of music anyway.
It's a bop.
But I think one of the things that for me puts it as like in such high esteem is its place in history, which is maybe why like the opposite of that, like trying to fight that sort of classic bias, that I went a little bit harder for Steam Gardens.
Yeah, I feel a little bit that way as well, where it's like I think you have to completely honor the ground theme as being foundational and as being like just a really amazingly composed piece of music, but it is foundational, and I think that things since it have like surpassed it as a piece of music.
Yeah, it's an interesting point that to me probably speaks to video games in general, which is like I wouldn't call Super Mario Bros. The best Mario game.
Yeah.
I think maybe there's a lot of games that have come since that would kind of, in as objective a sense as you can, be considered a superior Mario game. And I think that's true with a lot of video games, but it's just to me, it still is such a simple, crystallized, pure expression of the joys of playing this particular video game. I still am in mourning that it's not anywhere in this bracket. I just think it's not the right decision.
Well, right decision or not, it's the decision
It's
that we made. Well, whether it is or it isn't.
It isn't.
But, supposing it is.
It isn't.
I also wanted to bring up the 8-bit version of Steam Gardens, which plays in Super Mario Odyssey when you go like into the wall, which takes all of the. Well, let's just play a little bit of it. I like that a lot too. It's interesting, like comparing that to Mario 1-1, and I promise that this whole episode isn't going to be us justifying the decision.
I do not promise that.
But I think the Steam Gardens 8-bit like falls short when measured against 1-1. But I think that shows how much the instrumentation of like the fully orchestrated version like plays into why that piece of music is good. It sort of to that end, we wanted to talk about a couple other pieces of Mario music while we're at it, before actually getting to this part of the bracket. Greg, there was a piece of Mario music you wanted to talk about.
Certainly. I really love, I believe it's the first level of Super Mario 64, and that is Bob-omb Battlefield. Woo.
Man, that does such a good job of like mixing the like just really weird patch sounds and like the horns don't sound like real horns, but like they feel enough real that it's like a an interesting juxtaposition of real sounding instruments and fake sounding instruments. I like it so much.
Yeah, another one that just really completely expresses the joy of that game.
Yeah. And I think last time we talked both about how contemporary Mario music interacts with jazz a lot.
Yeah.
And how World 1-1, which I will never stop bringing up, is fun because of the kind of jutting up against clashing rhythms. And I haven't really noticed how the main melody is not swung in the way that the groove is. The groove is a very
Oh yeah.
and the melody's da 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 da, and it kind of like doesn't work, but it does work. It's
Yeah.
remarkable.
On that note, I wanted to bring up the end of Super Mario 3D World, which is just straight up big band like hot fun. So this is the credits roll from Super Mario 3D World. This is about as like alive and live as Mario music ever feels to me. And I mean, we were just talking about this on a different episode. Oh no, we will be talking about it on the episode that airs at the end of the year. That beating Super Mario 3D World every time I do it is like an act of just like pure video game joy, and I feel like this captures it just perfectly. And then I guess there was one more piece of Mario music we want to talk about.
Yeah, man, it's kind of especially it's hard for me to talk about Steam Gardens without talking about Gusty Gardens
Yes.
from Super Mario Galaxy. So what I love about all these pieces, and I think, playing a lot of these back to back to back, you kind of get the sense, at least to me, that each Mario game is kind of like pushing things a little further than you think maybe they should go. Where you're like, oh, that's
Yeah.
unexpected. That's like different. It keeps like pushing and pushing. Like the beginning of Steam Gardens to me sounds very similar to the beginning of
I thought
Gusty
that too.
Gardens,
Yeah.
where you're like, and I think that's so interesting when you're playing Super Mario Odyssey and Steam Gardens begins to play, and you're like, oh, I know what this is going to be, and then it's not that at all.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, but Gusty Gardens is such a good piece of music.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a lot of tension in that
Mhm.
music. The main
Mhm.
chord progression, even I think it goes to like that, like sharp 11 to the minor 4. It doesn't. It puts you kind of on edge in a way that, like you were saying, Galaxy pushed things literally to outer space. It's so satisfying.
And keeping with a really like traditional symphonic orchestration,
Yeah.
like it's strings and brass and woodwind, like it's
And guitar.
and yeah, and a little strumming guitar in the back, just keep everything moving. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that like later day Mario does so well is that it's like there's no musical tool in the toolbox that they can't use.
Yeah, and I love that read of using what we thought we knew in the Odyssey track and then just completely yanking the rug. I love that take.
So, Steam Gardens from Super Mario Odyssey is going up against the Silence of the Daylight from Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest. God, I know we've talked about it already, but it surprises me every time that this piece of music is as good as it
It's
is.
so good. This
Yeah.
time, this is the first time I noticed like the little like
Yep.
that's going on in the background the whole time.
It's funky.
It's
That's a piece
really
of
funky.
funk.
It is a piece of funk.
But it's also still, I probably talked about this last time, but that little B section,
Yeah.
those harmonic builds are so just like classic, like Baroque, classical.
Which fits so well with like the setting of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's the counterpoint in the A section is also really strong too.
Mhm.
So it's weird that it does manage to be both like a funky video game jam and like a Baroque sort of progression. Like it strangely accomplishes two things at once.
Yeah.
All right, guys, what are we gonna do here? Steam Gardens versus the Silence of the Daylight from Castlevania.
Well, should we
2.
go over the 8-bit tunes?
Uh,
Are there any?
Yeah, I think we do have
Oh yes,
a
I bet
couple of 8-bit
we've got
ones that
one.
we want to shout out.
Yeah.
Sorry for hijacking.
No. You are correct to do so. I thought you were referring to this other one on the board now. Yeah. I got you, Greg. So you want to set this one up?
Yeah, I think it's appropriate that we just listen to some 8-bit funk because this is also some 8-bit funk that is just like made a huge impression. This is, of course, Stage Music 2 from the Game Boy Color port of Worms Armageddon. The Game Boy Color port of Worms Armageddon. I'm so grateful for whoever was assigned to do the soundtrack and who decided the Game Boy Color port of Worms Armageddon needs to slap.
And we needs to have that like wobbly like tremolo on like every.
No, it should not work because it's
Yeah.
like it's like running into a wall of just like static
Yes.
and like noise that is relentless.
Yes.
But not relentless in the way that like the dam was from GoldenEye.
Oh, yes.
Right? Like it really like they're not that dissimilar, just one pulls it off.
Yeah, I think this benefits. The Dam is such a fast piece of music. This is like a slow. The way you use tremolo, it almost like it's in dialogue with like G-funk,
Yeah.
like early '90s West Coast hip hop. And the other thing that's relentless about it that just gets me every time, it constantly changes the key. It constantly
Mhm.
Yeah,
comes
it's
to a new
always moving.
chordal, and every time it does it, I like lose my mind. I played this game so much on a Florida vacation, and the soundtrack is burned in my brain. It's so good.
Silence of the Daylight from Castlevania 2 versus Steam Gardens from Super Mario Odyssey. I was going to have to come back to this eventually. So now we must decide. Which moves on to the semifinals?
Yes.
Yes, semifinals. We're in the quarterfinals right now.
Let me just tell you something. I'm so familiar with sports brackets. I know exactly how they work. I know all the terms.
You know where I'm taking most of this terminology from?
Hmm.
The Great British Baking Show.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah.
Heck yeah. Guys, thoughts, strong opinions? Is anyone leaning one direction or the other?
Well, they both kind of are combinations of previous things, right? Sounds of the Daylight, from a music standpoint, is funk and baroque. Steam Gardens, from a more video game centric standpoint, is classic Mario music with new flavor of Mario music. The overture careening into the surf rock, which leads me to no point.
No,
I
but
guess.
that is a good point, and like interesting to think that they are both like a synthesis of two different styles of music. But it's just interesting that Steam Gardens is like within itself. It is self-referential in that way. Which is something that Mario Odyssey as a game does so well,
Very true.
marrying the like new kind of Mario with the old kind of Mario. We played the 8-bit version of it because the game brings you into 8-bit to play a side-scrolling version of that game. I think I'm going to go Steam Gardens. I think my vote is for Steam Gardens.
I am also voting for Steam Gardens for this sort of richness. Although Sounds of the Daylight is such a classically pleasing piece of music that I'm going to revisit a lot.
Yeah, I think coming into this, I was sure that my vote was going to be for Steam Gardens, but I actually think my vote is going to be for Silence of the Daylight. Listening to it again, like...
Do you want to hear it again?
Sure, I mean, I was just...
Sorry,
out of the
you could talk
gate.
No, I was just going to say, like, I'm just, like, blown away. Like, I think it's really, really, really tight.
It is tight, and Steam Gardens is, I think, by design, a little more sprawling, a little more expansive.
But I feel okay with, like, Steam Gardens going on.
All right, so Steam Gardens is winning the very first matchup of the Ultimate Nintendo, whatever this is, tournament. Next up, we have a matchup between Love is in the Air from Yoshi's Island and Balance is Restored from Final Fantasy VI. First, let's hear a little bit of Love is in the Air. God, it's so charming.
It's such a like beautiful piece of music.
Yes, it
like
is.
Mhm.
it's so it just reminds me of, like sitting out on the grass and it's a little bit breezy and it's just like so nice. You just want to live in that music.
Yeah, and like you're
Mhm.
sitting out there, you're drinking a lemonade, and you eat a red watermelon, and suddenly you're spitting fire, like a Yoshi.
You think Yoshi's drink lemonade?
I think if you gave him a glass of lemonade, he wouldn't say no.
He would probably gobble up the
yeah,
whole
he'd
thing.
swallow
Yeah,
it
that's
whole,
true.
I think.
You have to like fish your hand out of his mouth.
Yeah.
Ooh. So our listener Jason wrote in with he ranked all of our final picks.
Wow.
And for Love Is in the Air, he has this one at number 3. So it's a very high ranking one for him. He says, lovely song, slightly more repetitive than his number 1 and number 2 options. But that's Jason weighing in. Lovely song, he says.
It does have I mean, the loop is short, but I was surprised because I think we listened further into it this time than we had
Yes,
in the
yeah.
past. And I was just surprised at like how much it changed. Like I
Mhm.
didn't want to overstate it, but I was like, is this a little bit like Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony? Where, like I was just experiencing
Yeah,
the
man,
whole
shoot
day
your
and like
shot,
a little bit
yeah.
like a storm rolls in. You're like, well, this is the life I'm living.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is that. It is like, yeah, I think pastoral is an appropriate adjective there. Do we want to bring up our other pieces of Nintendo music that we wanted to just sort of talk about?
The miscellaneous
Miscellaneous
Nintendo?
Nintendo. So
Yeah.
perhaps the most miscellaneous of miscellaneous Nintendo music is, of course, one that we didn't talk about on the show, but we have talked about on previous episodes, the Wii Shop Channel music. I want to spend money right now.
I feel like it shouldn't work because like it's so like little Spanish Flea, but you have
Mhm.
like the
One of
like
the best songs
bass in
ever
the
made.
background.
Keep
Like
going,
I
keep
know
going.
it's not like it's not a bad thing, but like it feels like it should be insufferable, but it's not. We're all just like swaying along with it, and
I think that's a good way to categorize all of the Wii system music. It should be insufferable.
But it's all wonderful.
Yes, it is. Especially the I kind of forgot about this tune. I think when I was pitching the Wii music, I was thinking of the Me Creator song,
oh, yeah, that's also so good,
which
and
is also incredible.
it was incredible on like the 3DS as well.
Oh yeah.
Like I do think that's something that I really miss from the Switch.
Yeah.
Is you're in the eShop and it just feels so lonely. This is from the 3DS.
3DS, got it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It almost has the melody.
I was about to
from
say
the
it
Wii.
quotes it.
Yeah.
and oof.
Oh,
Whoever decided the Wii and 3DS system stuff gets like smooth jazz classical styled music. Oof, you're my hero.
that's one of the things that is really sad. I think you were heading towards this, but that is really sad is absent from the Switch. That like its system music is just silence, right? Like it doesn't. Like I'm
Yeah.
trying to think through. Like the shop channel doesn't have any music.
No, there's just sound effects,
has
right?
that
When you're like bouncing around.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I get the decision. Like I think the Switch is a more grown up system, for lack of a better term. But I
Is
do.
it really fun to grow up?
No, it's not. When you're
For
comparing it to
as
like
Peter Pan said, is it really fun to grow up? That's what he said to Captain Hook right before he killed him.
Is that true?
No, no, I don't think so.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that was it. Like, that was pretty much it.
We also wanted to talk about the great, great, great system musics that appear in the NES Classic Edition and the SNES Classic Edition. First, the NES. God, it's so good.
I love, love, love how it like incorporates like the 1-up sound into it.
And that's also just great. Like just as an attract screen, if you just have this thing on, it feels like it's a thing that you want to approach. Like if it's on at like a party or something, they're like, yeah, I want to go. I want to see what video games I can play.
Makes you
on that
excited to play video games.
Mhm.
Yeah.
and then the Super NES, which is just as good. Another just like great sampling of like 16-bit sound effects and musical instruments. That little bit with like the triplets of that go like yeah. It's so good.
Yes. I think its usage of literal sound effects from video games is a little more subtle than the NES one,
Totally.
which I think works to its advantage. I've definitely just been on the home screen of my SNES Classic trying to figure out what game to play. And this song I just never get tired of. I'm just always happy to let it loop.
But we are, in fact, pitting Love is in the Air from Yoshi's Island against the winner of the RPG bracket, which is, and I don't really know how we're going to play a sample selection from this, just as last time, it is Balance Restored from Final Fantasy VI, which is the entire 20-minute end piece of music from Final Fantasy VI. Is this a game that the two of you have played?
I have played it.
I have not.
It's I think my favorite Final Fantasy game. I don't know what else would. Maybe 7 comes close, but just like hearing all of these little, because the whole thing is just a medley, yeah, of all of the motifs in the game. Which actually, back to Jason's email, he ranks this at his number 8. He says, "I love Final Fantasy VI and its music, but a compilation of the game's soundtrack is cheating. For every strong section, there's a weak section, and vice versa."
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah,
I do think, especially, man, that like first section is so melancholy. It really like brings me back to that game, which I think of as kind of a bummer.
It is a bummer, but I love it. Like, it's a
Mhm.
bummer that I love.
Jason does bring up a good point in that I love the way he phrased that. For every strong section, there's like not strong sections. And that's why I like this matchup, because it is two really polar opposites. Love is in the Air knows exactly what it's saying and says it, and Balance is Restored
Has a lot
it's
to say.
all over the place.
Yeah. Do we want to, just for like to illustrate the point, do we want to just like stab around
Sure.
the Balance is Restored for a little while?
Okay.
So we landed on this section the last time that we talked about it, and I explained it away as Go-Go's theme, which is silly. But I mean, he's right that there for every like epic, soaring, awesome piece of music, there's something like this which is appropriate, like in the game and as it's happening, but that I don't love in isolation.
Oh, I love it.
You love this?
I'm having a great time.
Let's skip ahead a little bit again. You know what? I love this music, and it makes me think of all these characters that I think of as my friends. But I think I have to vote against it because I know that that is part of the reason that I love it as much as I do, is that I think of my like 14, 16-bit friends from when I was 12 years old. And not necessarily, the music itself is great, but a lot of what I'm feeling is about those characters.
Yeah, this is an easy one for me. I also vote for Love is in the Air.
I vote for Love is in the Air as well.
Goodbye, Balance is Restored from Final Fantasy VI. All right, now we are moving on to the Zelda versus 16-bit divisions first, and these are both 16-bit pieces, so great. So the Zelda piece is the Overworld theme from A Link to the Past, and the 16-bit is Brinstar Overgrowth with Vegetation. So first, let's hear a little Zelda. I'm going to let Jason have the first word on this one. He says that the Overworld theme from Link to the Past, per the philosophy that he wrote in about, he was the one who emailed us at the beginning of the contest, this song is too repetitive, iconic and memorable, but repetitive. Thoughts on that, guys?
It viscerally upsets me, and I don't know why. To like, I guess I find it to denigrate like such a sorry, Jason, I don't mean to be this, we're friends.
You don't mean to politely disagree with him, but
it's such a this music is so good, and the melody is so good, and the progression is so good, and every time I hear it, it makes me feel like a hero. And I think it represents, I think it kind of does maybe what the Balance is Restored piece was aiming to do with its sort of filmic, cinematic, motif-driven bombast. And I think it's repetitive. Its repetition is to its benefit.
I think it's also like made for the repetition
Yeah.
too. Like it doesn't feel like it overstays its welcome really. Like
Mm-hmm.
we talked about how the Love is in the Air is sort of a short loop, and even like within its loop, that it like kind of loops back on itself. And I would say that that is one of the things that makes that piece feel like a little less than perfect for me. But Zelda, like I want to keep hearing. I want to live in that moment of heroism, and it's never too much, and it never feels overstayed to me. So I don't. This is one where I feel like it somehow like grows past the repetition.
I think it captures the spirit of Zelda, like the experience of playing that game so perfectly that it's honestly just completely remarkable. If there was one thing that, especially this version of the theme, that I don't love, is I think that you really hear the limitations of the samples
Yeah.
that they're using. Um, and in a way that like I even Balance is Restored works around for a lot of it. Like I feel
Yeah.
like the instrumentation is stronger there, but man, I kind of I mean, other than that, I think it's almost perfect.
Let's play a little bit of its competition from Super Metroid, Brinstar Overgrowth, and Vegetation Area. Whew, I like that one a lot. It's so unsettling, like the different, just like it feels like different textures and sounds like kind of come in around that like bass line as it builds up from just like a dun to like something a little bit more, and then it kind of gets like a little bit of a melody, and they're just like all these little hits and like waves of sound that come into it. I don't know, it's so neat and so atmospheric.
Yeah, it's interesting. Listening to it this time, I like really appreciated the bass, especially in the earlier part of it, but didn't really love all the stuff that was going on around it. Like I like I don't know what you call it, like the later part where like you have like the doon 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 doon.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
that part is great, but the first part I'm not feeling it that much.
It is a weirdly rhythmic construction. Like it's like all over the place. It feels like you're getting punched, but it makes my head nod. It does work still as an accessible kind of funk banger, and it kind of reminded me of like 1980s Michael Mann movies.
Totally.
Of
Or like the
like-
opening of the People's Court.
Yes, absolutely. The whole thing gives me, and I think these cultural touchstones speak to it, it's a very dark, edgy, gritty mood that it sets. And for me, generally, that's not Nintendo's voice.
Yeah, it is frequently the Metroid voice.
True, very
Yeah.
true.
But yeah, I mean, I think you are correct in saying that that is not. It feels perhaps dishonest to put that forth as like representative of Nintendo music.
Maybe, yeah. And
Um,
at the very least, feels kind of performatively edgy to me. I
mm.
like it. I like what it's doing, but to put my cards on the table, I'm voting for Overworld theme.
Well, but before we get to voting, Colton Olson, excuse me, wrote in and said, "I'm so glad that my nominated Brinstar music won the best of the 16-bit music." So he nominated this piece.
Now I feel sad.
Well, don't feel sad. He said, "I wanted to defend why this is the best piece of Nintendo music of all time and address some criticisms from the podcast. The B part is awesome. When put in context with the A part, the B part totally rocks." So I think when we played it before, we sort of like stopped before it got to the B section. He said, "When I listened to it on the podcast, it didn't sound so hot because it was isolated by itself. When it's connected to the A part in continuity with the conclusion, it sounds amazing." And he says, "Oh, also the funk. Okay, it's funky, but it kind of foreshadows the Chozo Ruins theme and the Phendrana Riffs theme from Metroid Prime." So basically, he concludes by saying that he loves it and it deserves to win. But I think, and I do love this piece of music, I think I also have to go with the Overworld theme from The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past.
Yeah, same.
I do want to speak to that continuity point he mentioned, though, which I think is a very good point. The first part, while my head nods to it, it is very tense and very broken and very segmented. The moment it clicks into that more steady ding 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 ding, it does both parts pop more, and it is because of that continuity. So that's really keen listening.
All right, now we are moving on to the last match in the quarterfinals. It is Lonely Rolling Star from Katamari Damacy versus Full Steam Ahead from the Spirit Tracks and also from Smash Brothers. I don't know how to express this. Full Steam Ahead, Spirit Tracks from Smash.
Yeah, it's the main theme from The Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks, but the arrangement is from Smash Brothers.
Okay, but first we're going to start by listening to Katamari Damacy, Lonely Rolling Star. Man, that when the like full set of vocals comes in, it's so big and so good. I want it to go like 16th notes on the hi-hat and just like a straight dance beat. And it doesn't quite like it doesn't quite give us that. It's more restrained, I think, than I want it to be, but it's a really cool piece of music.
That's interesting you bring that up. I do think in general this piece of music, it wears like a cutesy, even twee coat,
Mm-hmm.
but underneath it, it is a very patiently arranged,
Yeah.
kind of interestingly, the chord progression on this thing is so interesting to me. I love this piece. It really does it for me.
Yeah, this is one of my like go-to just like feel good songs. I just feel like it's like pure joy. I just love it. I just love it so much. I feel like all of the pieces that we've chosen so far, Steam Gardens, Love is in the Air, Overworld theme, like represent their games so perfectly.
Yeah.
And I really feel like Lonely Rolling Star represents Katamari Damacy to me.
And so that is going up against Full Steam Ahead from from Spirit Tracks from Smash. Just keeps going.
Man, a game I hate, but a theme I love. Like honestly, maybe like my favorite Zelda theme of like the modern Zelda games.
I really like that this arrangement also brings in other Zelda themes. Like you get the
You get
main
that
Zelda
overworld.
theme, yeah.
Mhm.
And
On
it
that
feels
ninth.
great. And I'm not really sure how to describe like the texture of the music before it gets really symphonic. Like when it's just like the sort of like whistle and the
It
banjo,
it gives me kind of Bella Fleck and the Flecktones
Totally.
sort of vibes.
and then it like transitions from that kind of seamlessly to where I don't really know where it starts. To become like an orchestral piece of music and then backs away from it too. Like I'm not really able to track in my head how it's making these transitions.
So I have to admit that so first of all, I love this theme. I love the beginning of this theme because I
Mhm.
feel like it captures like a wistfulness
Mhm.
and you know like and then like it really like builds momentum and you're going on the adventure. But this particular arrangement is doing a little bit too much for me in a lot of the sections. I actually kind of prefer the DS
original?
version, like the more like pared down version. There are parts of this that I think it works really well to have like so many choices going on, but there are other parts where it feels like a little too much.
There is there is one part of it where there's like a xylophone accompanying the string melody.
I heard that too.
That feels cheesy or like Christmassy or something. That sort of like for me like tips the scale
Mhm.
from like clever or like effective arrangement to like arrangement for arrangement's sake.
Yeah, there is a lot of arrangement for arrangement's sake in this, and I like that you use the word choices. It is making
A ton of them.
bunch of choices, but it never it kind of goes off the tracks for me a little bit, and it kind of like spits out a bunch of choices everywhere as opposed to focusing on one.
Would you mind this will be the one that we like base our decision off of, but would you mind trying to find the DS
Yes.
one and seeing if because I would just be interested in like comparing the two, especially like side by side.
So just to give it credit, one piece of auxiliary percussion arrangement choice that I do love about this version, there's just one tubular bell played in this. Bong. And I heard it the last time, and I heard it again this time, and it works. Ooh.
Oh yeah, he just makes me think I'm listening to the Smashing Pumpkins.
Yeah.
Just,
Oh.
just in disarm. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so here's the original Spirit Tracks.
Super Smashing Pumpkins. Okay, go ahead.
So I think the smallness of it does like make more like cohesive sense.
Like,
But I think it struggles in the B section too.
well, I guess for this one, like, I think it doesn't. It never hits as hard. Like the highs are never as high.
Yeah.
But I think it is the more. I mean, just consistent.
Yeah.
I agree, though. If there was an arrangement in the middle of these two, that might be the sweet spot.
So Jason wrote in, of course, with all of his rankings, he puts these two as his top two.
Wow.
So Katamari Damacy at number 2 and Full Steam Ahead at number 1. And I'd like to just read what he wrote about them because we are going to be deciding which one of them moves on from here. So for Lonely Rolling Star, he says, this is a fantastic song. Not repetitive, uplifting, works with or without the vocals, matches the goofy premise of the game. I refuse to give a PlayStation 2 game ported years later to the Switch a nod as best Nintendo music. Valid point.
Valid.
Yeah.
And then for Full Steam Ahead, he says if the sky from Skyward Sword captures the feel of flying, and Hyrule Field captures the feel of riding horseback, then this perfectly captures riding a train into the unknown, just as good on the DS as it is in the Smash Brothers remix.
Yeah, this one is probably the hardest one for me so far. I really like both of these pieces of music.
For me, for the Jason bracket, I think I have to give it to, even though I totally hear the point of it's PS2 ported to Switch years later, Lonely Rolling Star takes it for me. I think it is I think it does a lot of the things Full Steam Ahead is trying to do, but it does it with a little more control, even though it's not necessarily a controlled, in quotes, feeling piece. I just find it a remarkable piece of music that does a lot.
Yeah, I am also going to vote for Lonely Rolling Star here, acknowledging full well that if this makes it to the end, we will have some explaining to do about this is the best piece of
makes it to the
Nintendo
end.
music.
And Mario 1-1 is knocked out.
And we know that Mario 1-1 has been knocked out. That is in the past, Greg.
Man,
I also will vote for Lonely Rolling Star.
Lonely Rolling Star advances to the semifinals, which means now we are matching up Steam Gardens from Super Mario Odyssey versus Love is in the Air from Yoshi. I'm going to pick up Steam Gardens right where we left it off. It just makes me smile at this point. I don't have anything new to say about it. I just like it.
shout outs to that little
Oh, man,
down
completely.
the fretboard. Very, very genre appropriate.
And that is, of course, going up against Love is in the Air. In some ways, it's doing like some very like traditional ways of like classical ways of exploring a theme. Like it has that development section where like you can hear it like playing with like what's happening harmonically, and then like later as that pattern is playing out in the like kind of guitar-y instrument, whatever it is that's like the chorded instrument, and then like the like bass string gets the melody. Um, I mean that is a really remarkable little piece of music.
It makes me feel like I'm in a Miyazaki film.
Yeah.
Like, like beautiful green grass, beautiful blue sky, Totoro's running around
Yeah.
with me. Like I just love it. I really, really love it. Not that we're comparing the two yet, but like I think what I appreciate most about Steam Gardens, honestly, is just like the when you're listening to it, it's just like the performance of like the guitar, and the rest of it is fun and interesting, but it's like really just the performance versus for me, like Love is in the Air as a whole, I just appreciate more.
What are you thinking here, Greg?
Well, I want to extend that Miyazaki metaphor to its total breaking point if we can. I do agree that Love is in the Air feels like one of his more tender works. Steam Gardens gives me kind of like a Porco Rosso vibe.
Nice.
It's like, here's where I think my dichotomy between these two pieces is. Steam Gardens makes me feel cool when I listen to it, like a Michael Keaton voiced airplane flying dope pig.
Mm-hmm.
And Love is in the Air makes me feel nice.
Makes
when
you
I
feel
listen.
warm.
Yes. And normally I go to a Nintendo piece, or a Nintendo game rather, with the desired goal of feeling nice and warm, not to feel quote unquote cool. And yet, there is something about the instrumentation of Steam Gardens, the performance, like you phrased it. This is a really tough one for me.
Yeah, it's very hard. I like legitimately have no idea which way I'm going to vote. And like if we were to vote right now,
Which we're not.
which we're not, but if we were to do it, I would be surprised by all three of our votes. I think like
Yeah.
I don't have anyone nailed down on this. I think we all deeply love both of these pieces.
Yeah.
But there can only be one winner here.
Man. So I was going to say, I think I know which way I'm going to vote, and it is going to be
You were
blank.
just hoping that
I don't have the guts to
you were
do
gonna
it.
take a running
No,
jump.
yeah, kind of. It's like when, you don't really know what you're going to order, and then the waiter shows up, and you're like, I'll just go with my gut.
Whenever I do that, I just end up getting whatever the person I was there with ordered. I always go, oh, that sounds good. I'll have that. So one of you pick, and then I'll pick the same one.
Oh
Yeah.
boy.
No, I do. I think I know how I'm gonna vote. And for me, it is based in surprise. It is based in the experience of playing Super Mario Odyssey, which for me is more about fun and wonder. Where Yoshi's Story is like a chill time, and I like having a chill time, but I also like being wowed. I like walking into a big open space and thinking like, what is this? And the game at first offering me one thing, it's a mysterious Super Mario Odyssey or Super Mario Galaxy style level, but then revealing, nah, man, we're having fun. We're kicking it. We're playing Surf Rock. Grab a beer. We're all having a good time. I'm going to vote for Steam Gardens.
I'm going to vote next so we can make Mark be the tiebreaker, because
Very good.
I liked doing that in the last episodes. I will vote for Love is in the Air. And I will vote for it because of a very choice word you chose, Patrick Ellers, which is let's grab a beer. Steam Gardens, to me, is a less... I, too, love the experience of a Mario game that awe-strikes you,
Mm-hmm.
that gives you that sense of wonder. But for me, and maybe this is just a personal thing, the Nintendo experience tends to be tapped into my childlike sense of wonder. The way that maybe like Jump Up Superstar, that level does. Steam Gardens, grabbing a beer, kicking it, being cool is like kind of a grown-up level of awe and wonder. I know this is kind of an absurd argument to make, but Steam Gardens just feels a little too cool older brother rather than like open-minded, truly wonder-feeling child, which is what I love the most about Nintendo.
Despite the fact that you are yourself a cool older brother.
I am a younger brother.
Only a younger brother. That's right.
It's true. And so I must play into my younger brother status. I must vote for Love is in the Air.
So
Mark, think about your siblings.
I mean, I'm right in the middle.
Well,
So,
well, you can't vote for both of them.
So one of the reasons I championed Steam Gardens in the beginning was that it like pushed Mario beyond where I think like its comfort zone. And I really, really love that piece, but I think my vote is for Love's in the Air.
Ooh.
And it does come down to like, as I just don't find Steam Gardens like comforting. I would not turn to Steam Gardens for anything other than, like I like it as a piece
Put
of
on
music.
a pair of sunglasses.
Right. No, exactly. Like
and
yeah.
shorts with a floral print on them.
Yeah,
I
like,
mean, that's fun.
Absolutely. I would completely do that. But for me, like video game music, I want it to move me, and I don't think that Steam Gardens moves me. So
Okay.
yeah, Love is in the Air is my vote.
This battle hurts.
Yeah,
it
does
hurts
hurt.
to see Steam Gardens go. I gotta say.
Which means the other side of the semifinals is the overworld theme from Zelda: Link to the Past versus Lonely Rolling Star from Katamari Damacy. Let's start with the Zelda again. Oh, the video that I was playing it from faded out on its own.
We can take the hint, video.
So one thing I do want to bring up about the Zelda Overworld theme is that I love the way it's used at the end of A Link to the Past. Can I pull that up?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I don't think I'm familiar with that arrangement. While you're pulling that up, I would love to talk about its. It feels like a John Williams fanfare to me. In my brain, it is as like instantly putting me in a time and a place as the big Star Wars chord that opens every film. It takes you there so quickly. And like Williams, it has such a beautiful, strongly centralized melody, and it has lots of lovely counter melodies going on underneath.
So here's how it is, the setting of it at the end of Link to the Past. It can just take being like stretched and like pulled apart and orchestrated entirely differently, and still be this like great, moving, wonderful piece of music.
Which, going back to your John Williams like Star Wars idea, the music in the prequels, and the entire Star Wars saga, but I think of it especially in the prequels, the way he like takes the themes from the original trilogy and like completely rearranges them, and so they all sound like of a piece, and there are snippets that are familiar, but then if you like speed it up or slow it down or change the key, you're like, holy crap, it's this like piece of music that I'm so familiar with. And I totally get what you're saying, listening to the end credits there.
That this music is similarly versatile. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's malleable.
And ductile.
Ah.
We can draw it into strings. should we listen to more of Katamari Damacy's Lonely Rolling Star?
Strings like music.
I'm going to I'm gonna pick up where we had stopped before, so we don't get like the same progression and we get more stuff. 'Ll we'll let it keep going.
You gotta get that chorus.
Okay, I'm glad we let it like keep going there and through that like other like kind of breakdown section. I think I enjoyed it a lot less hearing it explore itself more. There's like the part where like she's sort of like mumbling with it and like not really singing, and I don't know. So some of the choices during that build up felt weaker to me than the like sort of strong statement of the piece from earlier in the song.
I think I agree. I think it felt a little too exploratory for its own good. It reminds me, for most of it, of like my favorite kind of pop music, which is that it is so catchy and so accessible, but just a little something kind of different or unique or idiosyncratic about it. And I think it totally threw catchiness, hookiness to the wind when it went into that kind of like
it gets
strange
like,
bridge.
Yeah, like really esoteric and just like you're already digging the song, so it's gonna get just strange here.
So I agree with you that it does that, but I think it is effective in doing so in the same way that like in you have to have the Temple of Doom in order to appreciate The Last Crusade. You know, like you have to have the
Not
weird...
on most of my rewatches.
you know, you have to have like the weird diversions. That way, when it comes back to that chorus, you're like, ah, yes.
Yeah, true. It's the A.B. Brinstar argument. I see what you're saying, but it does. It loses me a little bit, and I feel like it loses itself a little bit too.
I think I know how I would like to vote.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to jump in right away to make Mark be the deciding vote if he would like to go first this time.
I don't think I would. I think this one's going to be unanimous, not anonymous. I'm
voting anonymously.
I will also be voting anonymously
for the overworld theme from A Link to the Past.
As will I.
And a third person here will also be voting for.
Is that the Masked Magician?
We've disguised his voice.
That's
for
right.
his
It's
request.
me, the Masked Magician from the 2000s Fox live TV
We've
specials.
talked about it on this show
We
before.
have many times.
So
He's canon.
yeah, he's canon.
He rules. Let's bring him back.
That means going into the finals, we have. I love how simple these two pieces of music are. Love is in the Air from Yoshi's Story and the Overworld theme from The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Do we need to hear either of these pieces of music again? I feel like we know them at this point.
I have found it helpful to hear them like in contrast to one another. So I wouldn't mind hearing a little bit of them again.
All right, here is Zelda. And then we'll bring up the other one, Yoshi.
Show it its proper respect.
We are going. Sorry, Love is in the. I'm pushing buttons over here, Greg. You show the respect for me, not for me, but in my stead. Show the respect.
Here at number 2 is Love is in. I'm boinking it up. Mark, you tried.
No one gets to try.
Man, 2 pieces of music with 2 completely different goals. Both so good.
Yeah.
Are these both composed by Koji Kondo? They very well might be.
The overworld theme
Is.
I'm not sure about Love is in the Air. Oh man, I don't know what to do here.
I very strongly know how I'm gonna vote.
Very strongly.
Yeah, it's kind of for me, it's kind of an easy decision.
So here's the thing, that in this case, we are not voting. We must arrive at
At a
decision,
unanimous
right,
conclusion.
an anonymous conclusion.
An anonymous. We'll all put on magician ready disguises.
Mhm. And
I'll
we're
be
gonna
Masked
show
Magician. You'll be Chris Angel.
That's right.
You can be Teller.
And we're gonna show you, a lot of mirrors mostly.
Yeah.
I was incorrect. So overall theme is composed by Koji Kondo. Love's in the Air from Yoshi Story is composed by Kazumi Totaka.
Okay. So since this has to be unanimous, it can't be anonymous. We,
It could be anonymously unanimous.
I mean, but hold on. People won't know which podcast decides it. Because if it's
Welcome to
us,
No Boys. Today we're wrapping up.
Gah. That was my Mitch.
Yeah, pretty good.
All right. I think, Greg, are you pulling for the overworld theme?
You
From The
guessed
Legend
it,
of
buddy.
Zelda.
You guessed it.
I think I agree with that. I love Love is in the
Me
Air.
too.
But I just think that the overworld theme is more dynamic. It is more flexible. I want to hear it in every context forever. And I'm going to be on an awesome adventure while I do it. I'm going to ride a horse, even
Yeah.
though that doesn't happen in Link to the Past. I'm going to swing a sword. I'm going to throw a boomerang.
Yeah.
I'm going to watch my uncle die in front of me. And the whole thing is going to be awesome.
Yeah, it speaks to me to the sense of awe and wonder that I think the best Nintendo experiences give me. It gives you that awe, it gives you that scope, but it still feels like brand new. It feels like opening your eyes every time you hear it.
And I think this is going to be a very drama-free conclusion because I'm also voting for the overworld theme from A Link to the Past. And I think, one of the reasons I chose Love is in the Air over Steam Gardens was this sense of like comfort. And one of the things I love about the overworld theme is it does everything you described, Greg, and it also makes you feel safe.
Yes.
Where you're just like, you are taken care of. You're going to go on this adventure, but it's a safe space.
Right.
And
It's going to be all the best kinds of pretend scary.
Right.
Like you're in the caves on Tom Sawyer's Island at Disneyland, right? Like that, where you're like, it's dark and it feels like rock, but it's not really rock, and your dad's right there, and like you're
Yes.
gonna be fine.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly like that. And so I love this piece of music. I think it is a perfect piece of music.
Yeah.
Well, let's hear just a little bit of it one last time. Congratulations to the Overworld theme from The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. You are the best piece of Nintendo music of all time.
Dare I say definitively?
I dare say definitively. We put in a lot of work. Our listeners put in a lot of work, and we arrived at this conclusion together, and we're all still friends. All right, let's close this out. Greg, thank you so much for doing this with us.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a true pleasure.
How do you feel about where we landed?
Really good.
Me too.
The idea of the Zelda theme being the best piece of Nintendo music is something I feel very good about.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
It was
Mark,
just-
how you feel?
I feel great. I feel like it was, like our final 8 was a real grab bag.
Yeah.
But I think it really reflected the diversity
Mhm.
of like what Nintendo music means and can offer, and like all the different feelings that it can give you. But it was a circuitous path. But I really think we arrived at like a great answer.
Yeah. Greg, is there anything that you would like to plug?
Oh, give me a dang follow on the social medias at Smith L. Greg, Twitter and Instagram. Check out my website, smithlgreg.com. You can see some stuff I've made. Yeah, that's what I got.
You directed a couple videos that came out this week, right?
That's true. I did direct recently a Magic Mike parody with sketch group 7th grade, and I directed a Christmas music video called A Good Old Fashioned Christmas Brawl, which is a Western sort of fighting music video with a very talented singer named Becky Sanders.
And we can get all that on your website?
Oh, heck yeah.
Oh, heck yeah, you can get that all on the website. Mark, do you want to plug anything?
Well, I do this podcast called Nintendo Cartridge Society.
And where can people find that?
Campfire Media, or wherever you get your podcasts.
There you go. Thank you for stalling while I pulled up the how I wrap up the show, which I've done twice a week for the last 2 years. You'd think it'd be committed to memory, but I don't have it there. That's going to do it for this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. Remember, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. If you like the episode, you can share it on Facebook or Twitter. It helps us out tremendously when you do that. You can follow Mark and I on Twitter. I'm at Patrick_Ellers. Mark is at MKE Mitchell. The show is at Nin Cart Society. We also have a Facebook page, which is just Nintendo Cartridge Society. Greg, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, truly.
Olivia Duncan made our logo. Our theme music is provided by 8-Bit Betty. You can get more of his music by going to 8bitbetty.com or by listening right now. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Eller saying thank you for listening.
Hi folks, Sean Watkins here. I'm here to tell you about my podcast/album called This Is Who We Are. That's right, it's a podcast and a record, all rolled into one. Each episode features one song off the record paired up with a conversation with a guest who is related to that song in some way. Guests include Jackson Browne, Inara George, Kate Micucci, and the conversations aren't about these songs specifically. The songs just serve as sort of a topical springboard that hopefully will lend a little context to this new album of mine. Sort of like a modern-day version of liner notes, only much more personal. The podcast and the album are both called This Is Who We Are. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts.